Hello and welcome to the video. Today we're gonna play Bannerlord, but starting with no items, no gold and no skills. And starting with no focus and attribute points, we'll need to level up before we can raise them. The goal for this video will be sieging a settlement with only our own party. Admittedly not the easiest goal, but we'll manage. We begin by going to the nearest town and joining the arena games. It's a good source of money for us right now, as it doesn't cost anything to participate and we get provided free equipment, but it for sure isn't as easy as it seems. Most of the time, one hit ends our run, and since we only get 5 to 10 dinars per run, it will take a long time before we get anywhere. Seriously, it's pretty tough out here. Thankfully, I managed to get a victory in our 4th game. However, the glory didn't last long, as I had to hand over half of our total winnings to bandits on my way to another town. And so we went back to the arena, but this time it was not as pretty as before. Loss after loss after loss after loss. It started to feel as if I was playing ranked League of Legends. However, this time I could not blame it on my teammates.
What?
After 30 minutes of being pulverized, we finally claimed our victory. I felt as if we turned a new page in our book. It made me feel unstoppable, like we would never lose a fight ever again. For sure we would only win from now on, and hey look, we just won. With our newly found fortune, we quickly went to the nearest homeless shelter to buy the finest men money can offer. Alongside a horse, a saddle, and since ranged weapons were way out of our budget, we had to settle for a less conventional alternative, a pitchfork. Also, apparently in Bannerlord, a wooden stick gets nerfed once you replace the tip with metal. But I digress. I immediately started chasing after the nearest group of looters to test out our new squad, and even split the looters into 2 smaller groups so that my guys wouldn't get overwhelmed. I bravely charged the enemies as soon as our lines met, but the rock throwers in the enemy squad really took a dislike to my plan. I only managed to get a few hits in during the whole battle, as I was relentlessly bombarded with pebbles and my soft mushy body finally gave out. But hey, so many of my men were alive that I was sure that we won this one, so I pressed fast forward and... yeah, somehow we lost this one. And what's even worse is that they took me captive. Truly a humiliating loss. Thankfully, they realized that I was on the verge of poverty myself and let me go. I immediately repaid their kindness by hiring as many homeless as the budget allowed and hunting down their friends. And with the odds being 2 to 1 instead of even, we managed to secure the victory this time. We expanded our squad with some free peasants, and our spoils included some boots and a tunic, so we finally didn't have to run around naked. We sold some of the loot in a town nearby before setting off deeper into the Empire's land. And on the way we got jumped by another bandit party. I thought about negotiating with them, but the sum they were asking for was way too high, so we had to fight this one out. Since we were severely outnumbered, I decided to once again try to split the large group into 2 smaller ones. But even with that, my troops weren't able to fend off the incoming attack, leaving me by myself against 10 enemies. I started baiting the enemy rock throwers by going in and out of their range, leaving them standing still whilst the infantry moved forwards, allowing for windows of opportunity to get in a hit or two without the risk of being stoned. And thanks to our weapon of mass destruction, we could pick them off one by one from range. Unfortunately, the last guy had what seemed like a bottomless bag of stones, so I had to use the terrain to my advantage. It took me well over 5 minutes to try to deal with him, but thanks to a random tree out in the middle of the field, I could drain his last stones and finish the job. Right before this fight, I put a focus point into riding, which resulted in us getting over 16 points from this fight alone. And I decided that the next one will go into bows, as I wanted something better than a glorified fork. We managed to sell our loot for a hefty profit, and with our newfound riches we visited a Kuzai town where we got a bow and arrows straight from the children's toy section. I didn't want to waste time, so we went straight into testing it out, and it was so inaccurate that if you were aiming for the stars, you could have ended with an arrow in your toes. Suffice to say, we were not winning this fight. After being dragged around for a few days, we escaped to a town nearby, licked our wounds and went out seeking some easier enemies so that we could gain some experience. But thanks to our low skills and a bow that was shooting in nerf darts, we could only manage to kill 2 to 3 enemies before we had to retreat to replenish our ammo. Doing it this way might not have been the fastest, but it for sure was the safest option available, and it ensured that in the future we could use the higher tier equipment that required higher stats. With the level up gained from this battle, I put another focus point into riding, as I felt that a few more battles and I would have turned the Sumpter horse into glue myself. I also put our first attribute point into control to help us with getting more bow experience, which will inch us towards getting a better bow that can actually do some damage. We also had to part ways with our pitchfork, as I replaced it with a much better spear. We quickly returned back to our target practice with full confidence, but I was so full of it that I decided to test out the new spear and got knocked quickly after. In an attempt to recoup my honor, after being released I healed just enough to attack the same bandits, which ended up with me knocked yet again. Round 3, motherfucker. I chased them down yet again, but this time I'm not gonna play it like an ape and just use my bow. After such a resounding victory, nothing could stand in our way. Conveniently, the town I decided to heal at had an ongoing tournament, and the grand prize was a high-level horse, so without a second thought, I decided to try my luck. Since we would struggle in one-on-one combat, we enlisted the help of our teammates to a higher degree, so that they could draw the attention of the enemies, allowing us to stab them in the back, or by drawing the attention to ourselves, allowing our teammates to backstab just as we would. It must have been an amazing viewing experience for the audience, watching as one of the teams valiantly pushes forwards, only for the other team to run away and attack isolated contenders 2-on-1, not giving them a fair fight whatsoever. But with this strategy we got to the finals where we bested our previous teammate to claim victory, and with it, the amazing horse. It would have been a massive upgrade over the current one, however we were nowhere near the required riding skill, and since dragging it around could lead us to losing it, I decided to cash in on its insane market value, netting us over 8,000 gold. We also managed to get some arrows which were incredible value for the damage they provided. We then ventured to another city in search of better items, and whilst selling the loot from bandits we murdered along the way, we found yet another quiver of amazing arrows well below the average value. They were of the same type as the ones we purchased previously, but this time they had the legendary modifier, giving us higher damage and a higher stack size. All we would need now is a better bow to shoot them with. After another few days of chasing bandits, we yet again happened to run into a tournament. This time the victor would claim a camel, and as I didn't mind earning a few extra dinars, we participated yet again, only to immediately realize that I forgot to heal after a few run-ins with the locals. Thankfully, we used a mix of relying on our teammates to do the work and hanging out the back whilst the others fight it out, only to get in to secure the final kill to get as far as the finals, where after the shortest 1v1 that a One Piece fan would ever see, we managed to best our opponent and win the whole tournament. Afterwards, we traded the camel for a much faster horse that we could actually ride from now on, and with it we also bought a better saddle. Thanks to the horse, any future battles would become much easier as the enemies would have trouble catching up to us. We spent the next 2 hours going from town to town, and on the way we decimated the Calradian bandit population, and then we finally arrived at Makeb, and there it was waiting for us. Finally, a better bow. I wanted to buy it immediately, but as I was browsing the shop I also spotted a pair of pauldrons I really wanted. However, to afford them and the bow, we would need to somehow come up with 800 more dinars. I decided to buy the bow for now and to try to earn the rest of the money in the arena. Our first match went incredibly well, where we took out enemy after enemy using both a bow and a sword, managing to take down 11 opponents and winning the whole thing. Our next few matches though weren't as lucky as before, so I decided to bite the bullet and strip both ourselves and the horse naked in order to be able to just barely afford to buy it. And with that we only had 77 dinars left. Thankfully, we managed to convince the local bandits to voluntarily donate some clothes for us. Group after group came to our aid, and so we shared our love and appreciation for them. Thanks to all the upgrades we've acquired, fights became much easier and quicker as we dealt way more damage than before. This also meant that we could start taking on more difficult fights with enemies that would have previously easily beaten us, such as sea raiders or mountain bandits. And with that came more valuable loot that could accelerate us forward towards our goal. Also, by this point we picked up a lot of experience in our skills, thanks to all the fighting we've been doing, which shows that we actually came a really long way since the beginning. But we were not done yet, as we still had plenty of work ahead of us. Looking for a real challenge, we tracked down a party of deserters, which will really put our skills to a test. Our plan for fights such as these would be pretty simple: don't get hit. We would use the range to our advantage by taking out enemy troops without the risk of getting hit back. The best targets to prioritize were the archers, as they posed the most threat to us and were the easiest to hit, since before they shoot, they would stand still, allowing for easy hits. The infantry didn't pose much threat as we could easily outrun them. What was a little annoying was that their shields would easily allow them to block our arrows, shielding their allies. We could use the terrain with higher elevation to shoot right above them though, giving us easier access to their backline. Sometimes we would run out of arrows, but we could just quickly retreat and engage again, which will refill our quivers. And with that we could quite easily eliminate the threat of enemy archers, and once their numbers got low enough we could just run them down, since the infantry that was chasing us before would be too far away to come and help them. And with no archers remaining, taking down the footmen was as easy as shooting them in their feet. We also had to keep some distance so they couldn't reach us with their swords, but that was the easy part. It took some time and patience, but with that, the battle was over, and it proved that our plan could definitely work. But it for sure wasn't foolproof. Right after this battle, we tried to tackle a much bigger party of deserters, and we quickly found out that if we weren't playing it safe enough, we would take unnecessary damage, and it only takes a few lucky hits for us to go down. Therefore, we upgraded our horse, letting us avoid enemy cavalry and staying out of range of enemy archers with ease. Also, whilst traveling, I noticed that Kias would buy food at insane prices, the highest I have ever seen in this game, so we quickly got to work buying up all the grain we could carry in the local area and selling it back for a huge markup. We explored this brilliant business opportunity, whilst still making sure to chase down any bandits that crossed our path. The goal was to slowly amass enough cash to buy the best bow we could use. And so we killed hundreds, taking their blood-soaked garments and kitchen utensils they were fighting with, and after weeks of getting paid, we saved just enough to get the noble bow. With our new bow in hand, there came a chance at redemption. We have found another party of 40 deserters, but this time we were much better prepared than before. We learned a lesson from our previous defeat, so we didn't expose ourselves to unnecessary danger. Firstly, we took care of the enemy horse archers, as they could easily run circles around us if we weren't careful enough. After they were dealt with, we focused our attention on the enemy archers, whilst making sure that the infantry wouldn't hit us with their thrown weapons. It looked scary at first, but once you got enough distance from them, they would either miss entirely or not even attempt to throw them. And thanks to our noble bow, we could pick apart the team of enemy archers from high distance with insane accuracy, proving itself to be a worthy purchase. We managed to get them down to their last archer, but as fate would have it, he hit us right in the neck and dropping our HP dangerously low. With our health being below 20%, we could no longer retreat from the battle in order to replenish our ammo, meaning that we had to finish this fight right here on this battlefield. Every single arrow counted, wasting too many of them could lead us to losing the battle, and with most of the enemies having shields, it wasn't looking so bright. However, there was a fortune in our misfortune. You see, their shields were round, but they did not extend to their legs. It gave us a chance to hit them in their knees, moreover the damage was still high enough to down them in 2 to 3 shots. In spite of that, you could still clearly see that the arrows we had were not enough to take them all out. Suddenly I remembered about those archers we killed. We could take any arrows they had on them when we killed them, granting us the ability to finish this battle. After this decisive victory, I have decided to start a new chapter of my plan. War. Thanks to our constant fighting, we raised our skills high enough to take on bigger foes.
Halt there! So, tell me who I fight.
It was finally time to step up the game. The training arc has finished and now we're ready to finally make progress towards our goal. This was the first real fight, no more training wheels, just us against the nobles warband. However, it quickly became apparent that hubris will be our downfall. The next stage of the plan will be a true test of mettle. However, the path to success isn't straightforward, but we can always try again. We would start off small and build up gradually. We went for a poor noble with only infantry in his party, which allowed us to run circles around them, picking them off one by one. You see, I didn't choose to go against the Nords for no reason. They're an infantry-centric faction, which means that cavalry isn't as common. And with less cavalry, it is much easier to weave in and out of combat, letting us control the battlefield with our superior speeds and maneuvering. At this point, I'm surprised that the factions didn't meet up together to set up a medieval Geneva Convention just to stop this massacre. Look at these horrified men running away, or as Israel would say, active enemy combatants that are clearly a threat. And just like that, we managed to take out our first lord, and the money from doing so was quite good. Also, I decided that it was a good time to start building up the party. Even though it was filled with just recruits, our first battle, which was against a lord, was an absolute bloodbath. This playthrough is on maximum difficulty and I was simply amazed at how well we fared this time. In the end, we managed to take down 40 enemies, whilst only 3 of us got knocked down. Absolutely incredible. And then I auto-calced them. Oops.
Yours is not a face I know. What is your name, stranger?
The Kuzite leader saw us approach him naked and decided to make us his vassal immediately. Weirdo. We grasped the opportunity and made the beeline straight to the nearest villages to hire as many horse archers as we could find. And then, when we were in the middle of gathering up a party to fight the Nords, our fellow nobles decided to declare peace. We also got handed a free castle, but since our goal is to conquer, not to own, there's still a lot ahead of us. And so we keep on fighting in battles, upgrading our troops and recruiting to fill in the empty slots, all of which allows us to lead a horde of mounted archers worthy of Genghis Khan himself. This battle looked like it was taken straight out of a movie. We encircled our enemies, allowing us to give them an arrow shower on all fronts. Their tries at advancing were met with even more arrows and the dust from beneath our hooves. The meat grinder was spinning at full force, and it didn't take long before only a handful of enemies remained on the battlefield, but there is no job too big for our cleanup crew. We reigned supreme from the snow-covered mountains to the vast plains. No one was safe from our exploits. Even if somehow we ourselves couldn't contribute to the battle, our troops would take the initiative and crush anything that stood in our way. We declared war on the Sturgeons, and with our death blender we quickly turned any army they had into fine red mist. It was a coughing baby versus an atomic bomb type situation. We decided to take pity on them, seeing how they could not handle us, and ended the war within the same week. However, when the opportunity arose, I myself proposed declaring war on those stinky Nords. They have evaded us for too long, and as fate would have it, we ran into a castle with a smaller than usual garrison. Our plan was to use ladders to scale both sides of the walls, splitting the defenders into two groups. But as we advanced, we were met with catapults, ballistas, and enough arrows to block out the sun. Yet we still moved forward fueled by determination, and we made sure to prioritize taking down the siege weaponry, which helped us avoid massive casualties on our side. When that was taken care of, we helped our men with clearing one side of the battlements before scaling the walls ourselves. We helped ourselves to a glaive that belonged to one of our fallen soldiers, as a bow would not suffice in close quarter combat. At this point, both sides have been reduced massively, yet we still were met with heavy resistance once we reached the castle walls. Our soldiers held the front line whilst we picked off any stray archers lurking in the back. We were managing quite well to hold our place we claimed, and soon enough we were in total control of this side of the wall. Our plan to separate the enemies worked, but as a result, the side we weren't able to support ourselves has fallen, so it was up to us to claim victory. We broke through to the other side of the wall, and we were able to use it to our advantage. The tables have turned and the defenders had to come to us in order to repel the attack. I was surprised to see that one of our soldiers from the other group was still fighting, even though it was not for long. He proved himself to be a valuable distraction as it allowed us to regroup and prepare for the final push. We were able to use our elevation advantage to pick off all the remaining archers. And with a final charge, we swiftly took down the last defender and finally claimed our victory. It for sure was a Pyrrhic one, however we still reached our goal. Our men shouted into the heavens, some down on their knees as they knew there were a few lucky ones to survive. In the end only 12 of us remained, however thanks to the sacrifices we were able to beat the challenge, and we could proudly say we conquered a castle on our own. We came a very long way since the beginning where we had absolutely nothing. We powered through the grueling grind and we came out on top. Thank you for watching if you made it this far. This is my first real attempt at a full YouTube video, so please let me know if you liked it, disliked it or whatever. I was in the process of moving halfway through the video, so the audio might sound a little weird, but overall I'm very happy with how the video turned out. And yeah, see you next time.